Okay. Welcome, everybody, this week to the Damage Per Second podcast. I am recording audio this week. I think it's week number 61. Apologies last week. There's no VOD for it because I didn't record audio like a fool. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry, everybody. So I'm here with Brett and Keith, my two co-hosts. Keith, why don't you introduce yourself, and then Brett soon after.
That's all right, Dalston. It's okay. We don't need no audio. So, I am Keith. And here is the co-host, Brett.
That's me. Yeah. I'm Brett. You can call me Bert. I'm Big Demon. Age of Demon. Bert. Anything. Call me what you want. Hey, next time you don't record audio, you should just ask me and Keith a bunch of yes or no questions. And that'll make for a really interesting podcast.
It was really interesting, like, listening back. Because it's like, you'll hear, Brett or me ask you a question, and then you just hear one of us go like, yeah. Yeah.
I didn't listen back. Man, so I guess I'll have to talk about Breath of the Wild again. Another reason to talk about Zelda. Oh yeah. No.
Well, a big thing I want to talk about.
People in the Twitch chat, if you see something, say something, or if you don't hear something or don't hear something.
Yes, very important.
That doesn't quite roll off the tongue.
Yeah.
The night's almost over. We'll be safe to move on.
That's okay. We'll be prepared for the future now when I don't make stupid mistakes. I'm gonna make sure I check every time now. I don't know what it is about XSplit, but sometimes it just does that, and it's really annoying. Yeah, so anyway, we are recording audio this week, so yeah, we could talk more about Zelda, Horizon this week, and specifically because Mass Effect just came out, so I guess let's talk a little about what we've been playing, because I'm sure it's both of those two first games that I had mentioned. Brett, why don't you get us started this week?
Oh man, so I guess I need to mention again that I finished Zelda, right?
You did, yes.
Yeah, so I finished Breath of the Wild on my Nintendo Switch, mostly in tablet mode, which it's like noticeably better, the performance, to the point where I don't think I want to play it on a TV. Like, it's cool to see it on a TV, but I need to play it on the tablet because A, the screen looks better. Well, I'm sorry, it looks great. It doesn't look better than a 4K TV, but it looks great, and the performance is much better because it's downscaled, and obviously that requires less power, and it's going to have better frame rate, which is kind of the main crux of what's wrong with Breath of the Wild. But yeah, Breath of the Wild was an incredible game. Probably my favorite game of all time. Probably the best game that's literally ever been created. It does so much right. It never stops being fun because it never really starts requiring you to do things. Like the way that it handles everything is kind of just the reason why it's so good. Is like you just have so much freedom as a player, and a lot of it's because of the early game items that I don't really want to get into, because I think it's kind of where a lot of the magic comes from. Like the main item that you get.
The ocarina?
Yeah, the ocarina. Actually, this is off topic from Breath of the Wild, but I miss music being a focus of Zelda games, sort of like playing music and that, like, I mean, the Wind Waker baton was like the last time it was really prevalent, and that was kind of annoying. It wasn't really well thought out. Like, I thought the ocarina was really fun to play, though.
I agree with that, yeah.
Yeah, and they made it all, like, in the remaster, at least of Wind Waker, they made it a lot easier to use, too, so I feel like a lot of the annoyance was removed.
Yeah. But yeah, man, Breath of the Wild, what a game. Like, I think anybody needs to play that. Gamers, non-gamers. It's just really an excellent example of where open world games should go.
Yes.
And it's like hard to pinpoint what exactly it does right, but it just feels so damn good to play at like every moment. There's just like there's no bad moments, because the world is interesting enough where you don't really need to be trying to accomplish anything to like enjoy your exploration. You're just coming across cool things and like cool structures and cool whatever. Like, there's always something new to find around every corner and up every mountain, and it's really great.
Well, I think that pinpoints exactly why it's good. You were saying you weren't sure why. I think that's
Oh, yeah,
That's it right
yeah.
there. I mean,
I guess I am sure.
yeah, it's just there's rewarded. The game is really just about exploring. Like, there's a story. I feel like there's much less emphasis on a sort of story in this Zelda than many others, and I'm not a really big fan of previous Zelda like main stories. I never found them to be that. They've always been like mildly campy to me. So I never found that to be like the big drawing factor of Zelda. It was always, you know, the Metroidvania-esque type thing.
Yeah.
But overall, like, I really, really like... I just like everything about this game. I've played enough of it where this is the point where in any game I'd probably get about sick of it, and now I just, like, every day I look forward to coming home and playing it a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's very rare. Some, like, there's waking up, or, like, staying up too late excited to play, and then there's looking for excuses to get home as soon as possible to play games. And for me, those are like two separate tiers, and this one definitely hits that second tier. And it's been like 3 or 4 weeks now, so I'm still totally into it. I'm still totally into it, which is
Excited.
yeah, it's really fun. It just draws you in. I've read some completely legitimate criticisms, and I think this ties into talking about Mass Effect later, but look, I'll be completely honest. The frame rate is dog shit. It really is. And I'm sorry. And I'm not saying that the game is bad. And I think that's really an interesting part to just game reviews in general. Is like, what is the game bad because the frame rate is bad? And the way I look at it is the game is so good that I look for excuses to still like it. Not even excuses. Like, I still love the game so much that I'm willing to bypass the frame rate issues, which I think makes a big difference. And I think there are some games where if the game can't compensate for that, then it's considered a bad game. This game compensates for the fact that it has really poor technical performance. And like Brett said, I'm not really sure how. It's just a really charming and enjoyable game to play that doesn't hold your hand. It captures something that Dark Souls did, which is it doesn't hold your hand. And that's what so many games now are lacking, that so many gamers want. And they keep asking for it, and for some reason, it's not made more. I don't know. It just seems like every time a game like this is made, people love it. And still, a bunch of games keep coming out to be super accessible, when in reality, you don't have to be super accessible in the way it's defined to actually be accessible, if that makes any sense. I think Breath of the Wild is incredibly accessible, and there's no real tutorial. Yeah.
Yeah, the way that everything's presented is really, like, it's very approachable, and I think I made this point last week in our dead recording that, like, I mean, there's no exaggeration in saying that you can literally go anywhere at any point in the game. You'll sometimes need to equip yourself a little better, you know, you'll need to get some, like, heat resistant or cool resistant stuff, but that's pretty much the only limitation in exploration, and that's just incredible. Like, each mountain is individually crafted so that you're able to climb it and, like, take short breaks for your stamina wheel to regain, and that's almost like a puzzle in and of itself. Like, it just blows my mind, like, coming across that sort of thing, especially like so early in the game as well. I'm like, oh, it's a little overwhelming at first, because I mean, you get off the plateau and you're like, whoa, I can, like, literally go anywhere.
Yeah.
This is nuts.
Yeah, there's no restrictions.
They
Nothing
sort of,
is gated to you. Nothing.
Yeah, and they nudge you in the direction, and, you know, I've seen a lot of people are getting the same first area as others, but there's a lot of people that have been like, oh, you went there first, I went over here, and I did this, and I whatever. It's just, I don't know. It's an incredible feat, and I can't believe that Nintendo put this game out after Skyward Sword. I'm still, like, I don't know, what did I beat it, like a week ago, and I'm still, like, floored about it. I can't wait to talk about it all the time with whoever I can.
I've read a couple interesting articles breaking down how Skyward Sword was reaction to the criticism they got for Twilight Princess, though in my opinion, Twilight Princess was a pretty darn good Zelda title, but a lot of it was like there was no reason to backtrack, which was a big portion to previous, like, Wind Waker, not really even Wind Waker. There was backtracking to certain areas, but most islands you didn't return to. Lots of reasons to backtrack, though, in Majora's Mask and Ocarina. And so people said in Twilight Princess, typically when you finished an area, you didn't go back. Also, the world was really large, but mostly empty. So Skyward Sword was way more linear, and really just it worked on those specific areas that people had problems with with Twilight Princess. And then this is almost a reaction to, this is like the pendulum back almost, which I think is really interesting. It's like a really interesting view on that, where now it's like, okay, well, we're going to overcompensate for the fact that Skyward Sword, basically its overworld was like a linear dungeon almost to get to the dungeons, which is an interesting take on that, I suppose. And I don't know. When I saw it laid out like that, it made a lot more sense to me, personally.
Yeah.
I'm seeing the infested gather at
Yeah,
one of the
it's
barricades.
I'm excited. I'm excited to see what else they come up with.
Yeah.
Man, I mean, imagine like if the new Mario is in this engine and like accomplishing the same thing. 'Cause, I mean, this Mario is going for the same thing too, where it's sort of going back to its roots of being an open world sort of style game. Well, I guess it's not really open world, but you have like the hub world. I think that New Donk City is acting as like the hub world, and then you just go into like different levels around the city.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of what it sounded like, sort of like Super Mario 64 with like the castle. You know how you jump into the paintings and all that.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I'm super floored. I think I was just also gonna say what separates it from a lot of other open world games is I find in a lot of open world games you sacrifice certain aspects of gameplay for others. Like, for instance, like Metal Gear Solid 5 has a really great open world, and like the missions are fun, but it kind of suffers from one, repetitive missions, and two, like the story is kind of especially for a Metal Gear game. And then you've got The Witcher where the story is fantastic and the world is amazing, but the combat I never really found particularly great on the level of like a Dark Souls or even now Breath of the Wild, like, which is weird to say.
Yeah.
But I think that this Zelda game, it just nails every department. Like the combat feels really, really great, and it's very simple. It's like there's not much to it. There's one attack button, and then you can also throw your weapon. That doesn't really, and then there's the exploration. You're always finding something new. There's somebody interesting to talk to or do or whatever everywhere.
Yep.
The story is there and it's interesting and it keeps you going. Like, I do feel a little less motivated now that I've kind of completed the game to go back and play it, but yesterday I just got lost in some mountain. I was just exploring and seeing what I could find and killing a bunch of Lionels and stuff. There's no sacrifice for quality because of any particular reason in this game. It's amazing.
I agree.
Just,
Yeah.
oof.
We've been talking about it every week, so I hate to beat a dead horse, but it really does strike me as that good, and I will keep saying it. It really is that good, and I would encourage anyone to get it. It's hard for me to justify telling people to buy a console for it. To be honest, I personally would not do that. I still would say no to that. But for the most part, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's worth it if you have a Wii U. If you waste that money, then it's no longer a waste because you can get this game and be really happy about it. So.
Yeah, and I gotta say, off of Zelda, since we've beaten that horse enough, I think, for now. But I'm really enjoying the Nintendo Switch in general. I feel like I want to play every game that I get on that thing. Like, I'm thinking about like Rocket League, having like local Rocket League with friends that have a Switch or something, or like any number of games that are in that style. And I picked up Binding of Isaac Afterbirth Plus on it as well, and that runs great. It looks freaking amazing on that screen, and being able to take it anywhere is so awesome. And by that I mean from this chair that I'm sitting into the bathroom. So and it's comfortable, I find with handheld gaming you're sort of sacrificing comfortability for portability, and I have pretty big hands and they fit totally awesome on this system. And I can't wait to see what else I can play on it. Like, seeing the quality of Breath of the Wild on that tiny screen while you're not in your home is pretty awesome. It's hard to replicate that experience. And you can get that with a laptop or whatever, but I don't know. It's unique.
That's good to hear.
So,
yeah.
If you're on the fence about it and you have a lot of money to spend, I would consider it, because I think it's a pretty neat console. I think it's got a lot of potential for sure, and it sounds like it's sold really, really well. The according to GameStop's numbers, they're saying it could potentially outdo the Wii, even, which I don't really see happening, but
I'm glad to hear that it sold well.
Yeah,
That
me
means
too.
that it'll get supported.
I guess they're doubling their production for their next production cycle. So
That's fantastic. Yeah, it'd be
Yeah,
great to
it's
see
awesome.
Nintendo have another like really successful console. I just
Definitely.
can't. Whenever you guys talk about Breath of the Wild, I just can't help but think how much. I mean, I'm gonna love that game, but Jenna's going. It's gonna probably be her favorite game ever because
Yeah, definitely.
she
It's
loves
yeah.
Zelda. Like since she was a little kid, she even likes. I mean, she loved Skyward Sword, for instance. I mean, maybe it wasn't her favorite. Like Ocarina was like her favorite, but she loves all Zelda games, and she loves open world games more than like anybody I know. Like it's almost the only kind of game that she plays mainly. Um,
Yeah, she's gonna
so
love it.
I don't know. She's just gonna go insane, I think.
It's definitely a twist on open world. It's not like open world as you typically think of it, though. So I wonder how someone who thought Skyrim was like the best game ever would look at this. Because I typically don't like open world, but I really enjoy this. Just really hooked me in. I think if an open world game hooks me, I love it, but it takes a lot for me to get there.
I feel like people that like open world games will appreciate Breath of the Wild a lot. And I think they do already. But like it just does a lot. It does a lot the same as other open world games. You know, you still have a quest list and stuff, and it's not like getting, at least in my game, it's not like overloaded with quests that I'm never gonna do or anything. It's pretty tempered in that sense.
Yeah.
But you know, it's still got a quest list that you can try to go after, and you know, it's still an open world game. Like I think there will be a lot to appreciate, especially for Jen, who's somebody who sounds like has played like a lot of open world games. So,
Yeah.
it'll be what I'd be interested in is to see if she can like draw the differences and like understand why it's so much better, because I don't really spend too much time in other open world games, so
Well, I don't know.
interested to
Yeah.
hear what she has to say.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear compare it to other open world games because, I mean, just Zelda by itself, like I'm playing through the old ones, but I mean the Wind Waker remaster and stuff, and it's amazing how they can make things that I mean I mentioned this in a different podcast, but like seemingly repetitive things, maybe not repetitive or like seemingly things that should be boring, make it really 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 fun. I feel like they spend a lot of time doing that and sort of refining that experience. And obviously, there's a lot of filler quests and wandering around, and it sounds like they really spent a lot of time, based on what I've heard, they spent a lot of time making the slow points of an open world game really fun, like just traveling around, wandering. They've spent time really and paid a lot of attention to that.
I think they spaced out the content very well. It's a huge world, and I don't think a lot of it is just walking around. I mean, it seems like you don't have to go very far to just find something to be excited about. Whether it's you find a world boss, or you find a path that leads to one of the major story points, or there's just so many things to find. There's the main element of the game that replaced heart pieces. There's just so many little things to find that, again, and I've been playing for probably close to 50 hours at this point, maybe more, I don't know, probably around 50 hours, and I'm not tired of it. I thought I would get tired of it because there's so many little things to find. You think like, okay, more of these, but I haven't yet. I still just am having a blast. So I don't know. Again, even if I can't fully I can't fully describe why, but I'm just, all I can say is I haven't gotten bored yet, and typically I think I easily would. So that's been a big impact on me. It's pretty exciting.
It's an exciting time to be alive.
Keith, what have you been doing this
in
week?
many senses.
Well, in terms of games, I haven't gotten into too much because like I didn't want to start anything before I could really get into, because like if I was gonna start one, it was gonna be one of the big three, which is Mass Effect. Zelda and or Horizon. Jen's finishing up Horizon. She just finished it like yesterday. So I spent a bit of time just watching Jen play Horizon. It's just amazing how beautiful the environments are in that game. Like, it's weird. I haven't played it, but I've watched a lot of it. And like, people, like the complaints that people have are like, and they're few and far between, but they're like, oh, I didn't really care about the story that much. I didn't care about the characters that much, or like, Aloy is kind of, boring or something. But or like there's some facial animation hiccups and stuff, and those are all fair. It's interesting how like some of the facial animations are really good, like the main characters, and then you have some some side character where you can tell they just didn't really like pay much attention. So some people their faces are animated incredibly, and other ones aren't really. But yeah, the combat, the skill tree, and the environments, like all these things, RPG elements, and the monsters, the different monsters, I mean, are all just really, really awesome. How there's like so many different monsters to find. Whenever you find or robots or whatever, whenever you find a new one, it's like really exciting. Like you're like, oh, holy shit, what is that? And they've got different weaknesses, and it couldn't be any more different. I mean, the combat, the combat in that game is better than the combat in The Witcher, and I really like The Witcher, because every single enemy is very difficult unless you know their specific weaknesses, and it involves traps and using your bow and arrow and using different kinds of arrows and using different bows, and you're using your blast sling or using your, and obviously there's lots of different things you can use in The Witcher, for instance, what I'm comparing it to, but in this particular game, it's like you're aiming at different parts on the monster. You are, in The Witcher, they all have different weaknesses, but at the end of the day, you take your potions, you take your, you put your oil on the sword, whatever the right oil is. And then with some exceptions, like certain things are weak to different signs, you just kind of walk in and then you slash them with your sword. And I think the sword plays good, but and I didn't really I didn't get tired of it. But in this game, like, it's really different based on the monster. So you have to aim for their shoulders and knock off these things, and that disables their shields. And then with this kind of arrow, and then you got to switch to the fire arrows and shoot the gas canisters on its underside, and they'll explode and deal a bunch of damage and set it on fire. And then it can no longer use this really, or then you shoot like it's okay. Then you shoot the engines on its wings, and then it can't do this like flying dash attack. And if you shoot enough of them, then you permanently ground it, which makes it way easier. Or you can tie them down with ropes, and then it's a lot easier to get close. Like maybe there's some. It's just fantastic. There's
sounds so cool.
It's really, really good. The combat is just really awesome, and they put lots of thought into it. Jen had and I hope she doesn't mind me mentioning this, but I appreciated it because I read it online, and this is the kind of thing that. So basically, an issue that I've heard is that Aloy basically doesn't have any libido whatsoever, and that sounds creepy to say, but it really is like widespread online. It's the kind of thing that sounds creepy when it comes from some weird guy online. But even Jen was saying like, yeah, I don't know, it's just really weird. It seems like, and she's like, there's nothing wrong with, well, I mean, I was talking to her about it, and it's like there's nothing wrong with having someone who's not interested in that. And I think that's what they were going for. But for people who are, used to Witcher and Mass Effect and all these similar games, you end up, romancing someone. It's really interesting because lots of people, like girls and guys, all sort of hit on her, and she kind of responds like, ew, gross, get away from me. And So for people who are into like romancing in different games, not to put it in a different perspective, like a not a creepy perspective, like it sounds like there's none of that in this game. So if that's something that you're into, then I mean, and I think I respect it as a decision because maybe someone who's trying to save the world would have more important things on their mind. But
You heard it here first, folks. Keith, member of DPS Podcast, is one of those SJWs defending the choices of Horizon. I don't know, man. Anyway, I honestly, I agree. I think if they made that decision, I just don't care. I think people go way overboard. They don't need to write an essay. I said this to you actually in our Facebook chat about something else, but people write, huge essays on Reddit about like, it's just the takeover of the gaming world because there's no romance choices in Horizon, when they could not sound like a crazy person. You sort of like kind of sound like a crackpot when you talk like that. The eloquent way to say it is the game feels too sanitized without any romance choices. It feels like your character isn't a human when they are actually a human, and a big point of the game is the fact that you are a human.
Yeah.
And the game feels incredibly sanitized because there are no romance choices. That would be a good way to state your opinion without sounding like a crazy person. And and a lot of people just come across like crazy people, unfortunately.
Exactly. And to put it succinctly, because I have a tendency to ramble, but like in a game where you have multiple available options, like ways to respond, which you do in Horizon, not in every situation, but you do have that, and people are actively flirting with you, which they are, you would expect one of the responses to be like jokingly flirting back or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it almost seems like they went out of their way to not have that, which is, I think that I guess in general, game designers should have like, I like it when they have an artistic, when they have a vision, whether it's artistic for the story or whatever, and they're unapologetic about it, because I kind of like it, when things don't feel generic and that they're conforming and stuff. Like I think Overwatch does it really well. And I'm sort of getting into the next topic, I guess. But
I wonder if it's just way cheaper for them to not worry about the romance stuff.
That too.
yeah, it certainly
That's
is.
kind of where my mind went immediately. It was like, oh, they were just probably trying to save money and work and all that.
There's already a million lines of dialogue. They can't afford much more. Yeah. People think that's cheap. It's not cheap.
Yeah, like where the game's focus is not. Is it really Aloy's persona or who she is and
Exactly. It's not. Yeah. It's not really
any real
character-driven.
relationships on screen. If
Who
it's not
she
character driven, what's that?
I mean, it is about her identity to a certain extent, but not really. No.
Yeah. So I mean, who cares? I don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. If you want that, just go pick up Mass Effect Andromeda.
It's not what it's. Yeah.
For everybody.
It's not what it's about.
Okay, Mass Effect Andromeda. I think maybe it's time we open that can of worms.
Speaking of, little segue. Segue.
It is such a can of worms. Let's just keep it closed.
Just keep that can close. So here's the thing about the Mass Effect early release, and the interesting thing about it is, depending on who you are, you would say the Mass Effect pre-release was fine, the Mass Effect pre-release was terrible and a disaster, or the Mass Effect pre-release met my expectations. And I think that's the most interesting part that should be touched on is incredibly mixed. Incredibly mixed. Everybody seemed to have a different opinion.
That's
the critical
weird thing.
reviews were all over the place, and it's crazy.
Yep. I don't know. I'm not convinced on that game. I don't think I'm gonna be getting it for a while if I do, because it kind of just looks like half-baked Mass Effect to me from everything I've seen, and I feel like I've seen enough weird gifs of strange facial and body animations and gameplay footage where I'm like, ooh boy, now it looks great, and I'm sure it's great. For a Mass Effect fan, I'm just not super married to the series, so I don't know if I'm gonna take time to play it right now, especially when I'm still playing Zelda a little bit. I got a lot of other stuff to play.
Sure.
So, I don't know. That's my short feelings on that game. Like, it's hard to judge the critical reception because I haven't played it for myself, but there probably is a good reason that a lot of websites are giving it middling reviews.
Yeah.
6s, 7s, and whatever. Which even for Mass Effect 3 is a pretty far cry from like what it was getting. Like, and I saw something like when your facial animations look worse than your 10-year-old game, it's probably not a good sign. So I don't know. It's an interesting game. This
Yeah.
whole, like it's funny because I was making comment about how the game like felt like it kind of came out of nowhere. Like it just I wasn't really hearing anything about it for a while, just small grumblings, and then all of a sudden it was like info dump after info dump about this game, and now here we are, and it's out. It's like average. It's just strange. I don't know. I was expecting it to be better, especially after PAX, because I don't know if we talked about it much on aired podcasts, but we saw the panel, and I got to see an interview with the creative director that was on like a Major Nelson panel as well. So I basically got like 2 Mass Effect panels, and I was pretty convinced that this game was like legit. It looked awesome, but I don't know. I'm reading some things, and also that article I sent you guys, or the NeoGAF thread about
Yeah.
working conditions, which I take it with a grain of salt, but it seemed pretty informed to me. I don't know. So I don't know. What are you guys thinking?
Well, yeah, I thought that that thread that you sent over that had the like review of BioWare Montreal. I don't know. I mean it basically, just for everybody who doesn't know about it, they basically just say that working conditions are really bad. People are always getting fired. They're doing this performance review bullshit. Is like a cover up to let go of a lot of people. They split, like they went through so many different leads. Like this many leads were fired from Montreal compared to this, fraction of that at Edmonton, and it does sound like it does sound like there's just a lot of things that are weird, like all of that stuff. I mean, everything just sort of taken together. It's just weird. Like there's that stuff. There was this trailer that was attached to that thread, just like a little demo scene that looked absolutely gorgeous, it's just strange because like there was so much attention to detail, and then they showed what it was in the final product, and the face and it's same exact scene, right? And the face was much less expressive. There were less particle effects all over the place. There were less. I mean, it was just the lighting, like everything in the scene was worse, and it's just weird because you're like, that scene was done. I don't understand.
How did it get worse? Yeah. What happened?
How did it get worse? Like, I understand if the rest of the game doesn't look like that, but how did you make this scene worse? Was it compromises? Like, did you take out a bunch of stuff so that because the console version can't handle all these particle effects and whatever? Like, is that why? And then you take it out of all versions, including the PC version? Okay, I mean, I guess I can understand. I mean, I don't agree, but I guess I can understand that. But why the facial animations? Why would you remove detail and expression from the face? And it's unambiguous too.
Especially
It's not
when there's a PC version,
Yeah, absolutely. It's unambiguous. It's not like, oh, it's just different. It's not necessarily better or worse. Like he goes from having all of these complex facial animations and like crying out and whatever to just sort of having no facial expressions. So it's really strange. It just seems like there's a lot of weird stuff going on. And I mean, it's the first full game put out by BioWare Montreal, and it sounds like this is the B Squad, or someone in the thread even mentioned it's the C Squad, because BioWare Edmonton and BioWare Texas were the 2 main studios. They have their A team working on some new IP that they're hush-hush about. They've been talking about it, but I don't know. I mean, it could just be that not as good of a studio made this thing, but it's weird. Like, how can it get worse?
Does it disappoint you guys, especially like getting this sort of more personal the more personal introduction to Mass Effect Andromeda. You know, we went to that panel with like a bunch of the developers there, and like, and they all seemed like, I don't know, really pleased to be doing what they were doing. And then you see this game come out, and it's got really poor reviews for a modern open world game that's Mass Effect. I mean, I'd say Mass Effect is held to a
With
pretty
that
high
budget,
standard.
with that pedigree.
And with that budget, and like the whole thing on Glassdoor with it, with that employee complaining about working conditions and stuff, and you just have all those people smiling up there. It just makes me feel shitty. It's like,
Yeah.
it just, I don't know, it just feels, it comes off as really fake to me. I mean, obviously they're not going to get up there and be like, boy, this was a real shit show to make, and I hated every moment of it, and they made me work 90-hour work weeks. But
Yeah.
you know, we're here, and it's average, and you're not gonna like it. But you know, obviously, they're not gonna do that. But like,
Well, I'm sure
I
some of
don't
them
know.
put in their best effort. They worked late because they wanted to. Some of them might have, or you know, some of them really they wanted to make it the best thing that they could, and they're proud of it. But they were hamstrung by other factors. You know, they could still get up there, and I guess it makes me feel bad because I know that they couldn't be like, look, I wanted this to be so much better, and I could have done it.
Yeah.
But they can't be honest about why not. And I think that's it's an unfair expectation that goes on game developers specifically. That kind of expectation kind of exists in the tech world in general, and that reading that Glassdoor review does sort of ring true with working in tech in general. But game developers, the expectations placed on them is crazy. People just don't seem to realize that these are people's 9-to-5 jobs, and it is their job. Yeah. It is not their. Well, and for some people it's their life, but it's not their entire life. And some people, like, I don't know, it's crazy. It's almost like more so than people who make movies and actors and actresses. Like the expectation on game developers is so severe, and
Yeah,
I couldn't imagine being a big AAA studio game developer. It's crazy.
Yeah, there's tons of controversy and reports out there about, like, you know, crunch time, and which is, if you don't know, it's essentially like 2 to 4 months before a game is going to launch. They have what they call crunch time. They don't really call it that anymore because it's gotten a pretty bad rap. But basically, you're working 90 plus hours work weeks, maybe not plus. I don't even know if there's 90 hours in a fucking week. And like, you know, it's really just awful working conditions reported. You can read about like Take-Two from LA Noire was a big example of that, where the crunch was just like awful, and so many employees came out just saying how horrible it was. So I mean, it's just sad to know that maybe that might have gone on with this game. I don't know.
Possibly. You know, I was reading
Just
in.
to add,
Sorry, go ahead.
what were you going to say, Justin? I was just going to say, just to add a little perspective here. So it's got a 75 on Metacritic, which
That's good.
it doesn't sound that bad. And I think I would probably enjoy the game. However, you have to take that in context. If you look at a chart of average Metacritic scores, the average review score on Metacritic is not 50, it is 73, roughly.
And that's of
So,
all games on Metacritic.
That is across games on Metacritic,
Jesus.
according to, average user scores and review scores by quarter. And I'll go ahead and link that in the chat, and if I'm misreading it, you guys can let me know. But that really puts into perspective, that is across all games, and there are lots of terrible games. Lots and lots of terrible games. So this is a game that has a significantly higher budget than the average game. You know, it's got a great pedigree. People expect more from it, and this is the average review score that it gets, right? So it is disappointing. And you see things like a 60 from GameSpot. You know, that's a big publication. Then you see the user reviews, and all of the recent reviews are like absolutely
star.
0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0. I hate those people.
I don't
It's like
understand
such
why
horseshit. It's literally the release date, and you're putting out 0 scores because I'm willing to say that you can't possibly be informed enough to post any review right now if you were a normal user, unless you somehow got a pre-release copy. Like no reviewer would do that.
The problem
generally.
is they let anybody put on those user scores, and
Exactly.
and it's the same problem with Amazon too. Like, oh, my shit didn't ship right. Well, I wrote this really good book, but you can contact Amazon and take away my 1-star review on my book. Like that sort of thing. Like,
It's not even that. It's not even that. It's zero score after zero score with these people saying, I'm just reading down the list, like, EA rushes games out to make as much money as possible. This game's proof of that. It's too buggy and unpolished. What about the facial animations? Awful animations, terrible writing, lame story, boring combat.
yeah,
The
these
game
people
came
have
out
not played the
fucking
game.
today. You don't know how buggy the game is. You don't know how lame the story is or how boring the combat is. You probably haven't even had a chance. Like, hey, maybe you powered through, but I have a feeling you're just writing and it's even if that is the case, the game's not a 0. It's almost never a 0.
Right.
So
It's
I
not
know we're all
broken.
on the same page, but if you're someone that goes on Metacritic and posts 0 scores of games that you barely played because you get caught up in hype, stop it.
I completely agree. Yeah.
It's just like a hive mind culture thing where like people they think they're doing good by doing that. Like,
Yeah.
we're saving all these gamers.
Yeah.
Or
Because
we're,
of people
we're
like
mad,
you, no one
so we're
takes
gonna,
user score seriously.
yeah, we're so mad. We're gonna make this user score so bad, even though
Yeah.
the critic score is high. And I don't know if I've ever heard of an informed gamer looking at the Metacritic scores for their purchase decisions. So luckily, I don't
Yeah.
think it's too much to be concerned about. But like, it's still pretty annoying that people will waste their time doing that. Like, it's not my time, so whatever.
But you bring up a good point, though, also by pointing out how skewed the Metacritic average is. I mean, I was reading like concatenated reviews where from different sources talking about just what am I thinking? Oh, just from a bunch of different sites all at once, and there was just like, mediocre writing, combat was pretty fun, definitely not the Mass Effect you remember, 9 out of 10. And I don't understand that.
Yeah,
So
it's
it goes both ways. I feel like critics overdo it, and fans do the opposite. Well, they both sides overdo it. Both have extremes where I think critics are more likely to create some add to the Metacritic score, but their actual review doesn't really have great content behind it. And with reasoning to back up the score that it's giving. And that's only some publications, not all of them, of course, but it was funny to read, 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10, not very good. Not bad, but not very good. I just do not understand that at all.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous.
Like, review scores have just progressively become more and more meaningless.
Yeah.
And like, I guess we should bring up the freak out with Breath of the Wild. Jim Sterling. Well, so it had a 98 on Metacritic, which is, I think it was the second highest score ever, except for Ocarina of Time, which had a 99. And so then Jim Sterling posted his review, and he gave it a 7 out of 10, and that got posted to Metacritic, and so it brought the score down to like 97. Therefore, Jim Sterling, I guess, was getting like death threats. His site was DDoSed, obviously, because that's Babby's first hack. They got to DDoS something, and like it's why do people care so much about reviews? I don't know. It just doesn't make sense. Like, I get that, like, a lot of companies do put stock into Metacritic scores, and I don't know if that's still true, but they'd say they'd give like certain bonuses based on Metacritic scores and whatever. I'm pretty sure that's something I've heard, and I don't know. A Metacritic score is whatever. If you have a reviewer that you like, and they give it a bad score, then you shouldn't buy it, or you should look closer. You shouldn't be mad, like, especially about a game that's not even fucking out.
It's embarrassing. Yeah.
It's just sad. I don't know. People get so caught up in these reviews, and I think a lot of it's for the 14 to 21 range where they don't have a good job, or they're just in school and like they can't afford games, and so they take buying their games seriously. And I don't know, it's just silly. I don't even know.
Well, I kind of mentioned this. I kind of mentioned this in our group chat the other day too. It's weird that people are willing to care so. I mean, okay, people are willing to care so much to send like a death threat over a game review. And I do know that Jim Sterling specifically likes to make contrarian reviews. So it's frustrating to see someone who writes a review pretty much just to incite a reaction. At the same time, it all depends on how you want to make a rating. I mean, the game has really poor technical performance in places. Not all the time, not everywhere, and not enough to take away from my personal enjoyment of the game. So the question is the game good enough for you to ignore that? And if a reviewer thinks no, then they're going to give it they're going to give it a 7 out of 10 or something. And you know what? I think that's completely justified. I do not think it's out of the realm of possibilities for that game to get a 7 out of 10 from someone who thinks that technical performance is a big deal. Total Biscuit gave that game really poor reviews because he is really anal about technical performance, and that's fine. And the question is, do you trust your favorite reviewer to think critically about whether that should affect how you will enjoy the game or not? Because if a game is good enough, like Zelda, in my opinion, to get over that, then it still deserves a 10 out of 10, even though it has a glaring flaw. Whereas something like Mass Effect, it might be the same. Nobody really knows because it's only been out today, but the facial animations aren't great in many cases. Not all of them. Some of them apparently really good. But if the facial animations aren't good all around, is the game good enough to make you want to look past that?
Yeah.
And if it's not, then it doesn't deserve... I would not expect good reviews, and that's just it. And then you should base your purchasing decisions off that. I don't know. It just doesn't seem complex. It seems like a pretty elementary idea, and people are going on and giving 0 out of 10, and it's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, find the reviewer who you align with, who's anal in the same way as you are and likes the same games you do.
Yes.
And then just read their score and nobody else's.
Yeah, seriously.
But,
for a long time, I've never agreed with Jim Sterling, and do you know what I do when he posts a review? I don't fucking look at it. I don't care what he has to say. I don't trust his opinion, so I just don't fucking look at it. I have nothing against the guy, but our tastes don't line up, so I just don't look at it. Like, that's all it takes. Is just
you mean you
finding
don't
a
even
review
send
you
him
like.
death threats?
Not even death threats.
You
Can
don't
imagine
even.
that? It's always driven me nuts, and especially for us, because we've kind of lived in that world for like a short amount of time. We wrote our fair share of reviews, and yeah, I dealt with a couple people. It's like it's just so ridiculous the things people concern themselves with. It's like sad.
Yep.
And,
Prepare yourselves. The enemy is inbound on our base.
I don't know, I feel, and I'm not trying to come across as like better than thou, kind of like, oh well, my opinion is better because I don't have a passion for something. But at the same time, I think there are some things where you just sort of have to pick your battles. And this strikes me as one of those things with game reviews, because there's so many options. Like, you don't need to lose your mind over a bad review, or a good review for that matter. If someone likes Mass Effect, then let them like Mass Effect. Don't ruin someone's fun just because I don't know. It just drives me bananas.
Well, let's put it to the test. Justin, what review score would you give Skyward Sword?
I would give Skyward Sword a 5 out of 10. I think it is a perfectly average adventure game.
that's exactly the number I was saying.
And 5 out of 10 for me literally is average. It is not... It is not bad. Yeah, it's not like a Metacritic score. It is literally just average. And so some people would say like 5 out of 10, you're crazy. I don't know. I would give Breath of the Wild a 9 out of 10, and that 1 point comes off because of technical frame rate is bad. But other than that, I don't know. I think Skyward Sword wasn't necessarily a worse game, but it was a worse Zelda game, and so I think that there needs to be a discrepancy between Skyward Sword and Breath of the Wild, and it should be very clear because it's a game of the same series, and people should have the same general expectations from the same series. So I think that's reasonable. But I would not be mad if someone gave Skyward Sword a 10 out of 10, but I would ask them, do you think Breath of the Wild's a better game, and why?
I would just be confused if they gave it a 10 out of 10. Well, I mean, I guess I probably should be. I'm sure there are 10s out there.
Yeah.
But,
You just, probably a score written early when they're caught up in the glow of the brand new Zelda game, and they're,
yeah.
quickly read it.
That
So,
does happen.
I'm not even sure if it's worth diving into, but I wanted to just really quick. So the obviously the animations, facial and otherwise, were the big thing, but there's also like this big, especially on like Reddit and stuff. There's a big. I'm happy to not see a lot this many reviews based on this sort of thing, but like sort of the anti SJW sentiment, and mainly the fact that like they think that the female main character is ugly, and so I'm gonna touch on it from a different perspective really quick. So the original Mass Effect comes out, and they have the male Shepard on the box. Then people complain. So then they're like, oh, okay, well, let's go way overboard and we'll make a big contest to decide what FemShep looks like. And so they're like trying to, appease part of their audience. And then people get really mad because it's effectively a beauty contest. And then of course, because gamers are what they are, they have all these like multicultural ones, and they pick the blonde, blue-eyed Caucasian Shepherd. And then there's a huge uproar, and then they say, okay, well, we'll do the contest over again, but we'll just have like a couple different Caucasian Shepherds. And then they picked the red-haired one, so they lucked out there, I think, and then it sort of went away. And then there was the issue here where like, oh well, male Shepherd is just based off of some like a male model guy, and then the original male Shepherd, yeah, Mark Vanderloo, and then the new one is based off a male model, and then the new rider female was based off of a model. But I have a feeling they were like, okay, well, we're not going to fall for this again. We're not going to just conform to normal standards of beauty. We're going to be creative, and we're going to try to like give her, make her look a little more unique. And then everybody's like, why does the male one look like the model and the female one doesn't look like the model? And why, SJW this and SJW. And I think all this could be avoided if they just did two things. One, just treat the genders the same. Like, just do the same thing for both, and then no one can complain.
Yep.
And two, don't bow to like pressure from one or the other side of your audience every time. Have a vision and stick with it. And that's when I was going to bring up Overwatch, because they constantly are getting flack from both sides. Like, I mean, not constantly, but they have, right? The Tracer butt thing, they get flack from the one side of their audience. And then when they were, they're adding so many multicultural characters in the game, and they get flack from the other side. And they're like, well, we don't fucking give a shit. Like, two of our characters are going to be kind of sexy, and we're going to have unsexy characters, and we're going to have characters of all different races and genders and sexual orientations. Like, people were mad about Tracer being gay, and they're like, and we don't fucking care. And I think that it works great. Everybody loves them, right? These things come up and they quickly go away because they don't demonstrate. They're just like, well, we have a vision and we're just going to do it.
Yeah, they don't demonstrate a willingness to bend at all.
Yeah.
They changed the Tracer pose, and it was just as sexualized, which was when they released it, like it just wasn't focused on what everyone was complaining about, but it was still sexualized, which was hilarious. It appeased both sides almost.
Yeah.
It's funny how, I mean, like, video games as art is a pretty new medium, and like you don't really see people going against the general public. I mean, there's a lot of artists out there who have done I can't even think of an example, but I'm going to say that there are a lot of artists out there that have done very offensive things that are not normal, but they're still celebrated. And we don't really see that with gaming. People just kind of, like, there's no bravery. I don't know. They need, like,
yeah.
You're gonna hurt some feelings for sure, but I think that like artistic freedom is really important for maintaining the medium's like strength and whatever.
Yeah. Completely agree.
That's a good point.
So, like comedy. I mean, look at comedy. Like George Carlin is a horribly offensive man, but like he's also probably the most famous comedian out there, like, or one of them. So.
Yeah, just do your best, and if you want your games to have a message or moral, or perspective or worldview, that's totally fine, because different games will have different perspectives. Just try to do your best, do what you You know, do what you want to do, whatever your vision is, and then don't apologize for it. And if it's negative and you realize like, oh, we mishandled this, then you know, do better
Deal with
next
it.
time. But
Admit it, yeah, admit it and just move
leave
on.
it alone and don't make your, yeah.
Probably that a lot of companies just hire like PR firms that are, they don't, they're just PR people. They're like, I don't know, they have no personality.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
how do you,
and
how
I'm
do you
sure EA
squash
has
this problem instead of dealing with this problem? How do you squash it instead of
yeah.
whatever? I don't know. Interesting talk though. And game development is funny. It seems really difficult and not
Yes, it does.
fun at all. Honestly, the more I see of it, the more I'm like, wow, that just doesn't.
Not rewarding.
Exactly,
Like-
yeah, it doesn't sound rewarding compared
Like,
to the shit that
oh
you
my
put up with.
I got to work on the new Mass Effect. Like, do you know what the lackey who's like 500 names down on the credits is doing? Like, he's probably just writing some code into a screen where he sees nothing but the code and is answering to one person who's answering to another. Like, it's probably like working a shitty retail job where you're like working for these entities that you don't even realize. Like,
Well, and it's kind of like, oh,
Yeah.
well,
Ugh.
so-and-so, we heard about poor working conditions at such and such company. Well, guess what? It's because they got complaints about something really fucking stupid, and their management said, well, we got to change female rider again, or we got to change female shepherd again. So guess what? People have to work 12 hours for 3 weeks straight to fix this stupid shit. It's true. That's just work that people have to do over something that realistically, and I'm saying this on both sides of the coin, I'm not singling out one side or the other, is just fucking not worth your time. It's not worth it. It's such
Yeah.
a waste of time.
And I'll even say this: while I appreciate that they changed the Mass Effect 3 ending, and I appreciate it because I played it after they changed it, and I liked it a lot better than most people did. I almost think they just shouldn't have, from a business perspective, because people don't care. Like, they're never gonna not get flack about that ending. Like, as far as anybody is concerned who played the original ending, it's just as bad as it always. They didn't get.
that shit
I don't
happened.
feel like they got sufficient brownie points from many of these people who are complaining because they changed the ending after the fact. They should have just let it go and been like, oh, well, we'll do better next time.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, no, it happened. Like, you can't undo it, and I don't think that new ending got anywhere close to like undoing the ending. I mean, I had no real problem with the ending because, as I said, I'm not super invested into the series. But I don't know. I was also gonna say that the rider female situation, like, I guess people were complaining that she like wasn't pretty. Is that right? Like,
I think
Yeah,
so, yeah.
pretty much.
because
So stupid.
I was just gonna say that she looks just real fucked up. Like, her face is like not like a human face. Like, it just looks really
Well,
messed up.
I think that
Her
they
lips
might.
and the way that she talks, she's like flapping her lips so strange.
There are
Yep.
some weird facial animations. That's for sure. And people were, and I don't know whether it's disproportionately with the female version of Ryder. I don't know that, but I certainly know that people were complaining about it more, involving her.
Yeah.
There was a rumor that they were like changing. I don't know if they pushed it out already or if it's not true or what, but there's a rumor that they were like changing her face slightly
Really?
to be. It is clear that there was like something, and I'm not gonna say whether it was, and I don't have an opinion on it. It is clear that like they decided to go a different direction with her. So I think that like I was saying, I think that by doing that, they were sort of inviting the criticism, whether it's like, oh well, why does you know what I mean? Whether it's like, oh well, why didn't you put as much work into the male character, or well, she's ugly, or why, I think that by treating the female version of their main character differently every single time, I think that's kind of. I don't think that it's justified, like the crazy backlash, but I think that
It's
that
almost
it
inevitable.
was inevitable.
Yeah.
Another night,
Um,
keep them out of our base.
but I will say that I just got it today. I got the game today, because I knew that I would play it, eventually.
Boy, can they jump.
and I knew Jen would play it eventually 'cause she loves Mass Effect, and she'll probably play it on console, and I haven't decided yet whether I'm going to play it on PC or console, so I was just messing around with it, right? It's very easy to make a good-looking main character, I think. There are some real horror shows in there too. Like the default blonde person just looks terrible. It looks so stupid. People were comparing it to Oblivion, and it's not incorrect. There's sort of a weird, bloated, like greasy look to some of them, and then the hair just sort of sits atop their head, and it looks like someone photoshopped it on. And I realized that but it's not difficult to make someone that looks good. It's just the default blonde option has this weird. It looks totally unnatural. It looks like a character from Oblivion, but it's not difficult to make a good-looking character. And I'll also say I think that part of the problem is that the hair doesn't have any shadow to it. I think that's been a complaint, is how the hair looks. And if you compare it to something like, I mean, they keep getting compared to The Witcher, and that's a hard comparison because The Witcher had a huge budget as well, but it was made in Poland, so apparently you can get like 4 times the bang for your buck in game development time in Poland. So I mean, who knows if that's a fair comparison? But obviously in Mass Effect you can customize your character, so I don't know, can't quite retouch everything. But yeah, I think that a big part of the problem is that the hair doesn't have any shadow to it, so it just sort of looks like it's floating above their head. I'm gonna find a picture here and post it in the chat.
Yeah, there's just a bunch of little things that just seem
off.
Yeah, and I don't think it was. I mean, I think some of it might have been purposeful, like in case of the female protagonist, for whatever specific weird reason they decided to go with. Some of it, like you said, it's like a weird, inexplicable thing where they just said, we're going to change this even though we have a build that looks objectively better. And I wonder if we'll ever learn why.
That's the biggest question to me. Like, I wonder if someone had asked that question, at that press conference that we were at, if it would have gotten a real answer or not.
Yeah.
We should have asked, what are some of your greatest regrets during this development cycle?
So what's going to be the scandal of this time? Like people talking about how the Mass Effect 3 ending was rushed. What's going to be the explanation this time?
That would have been a hilarious question. Like, and I think a lot of the questions are like when people try to make a joke or like that would have been funny. I think even they would have had to laugh at that.
So what's going to go wrong this time? Yep.
It's funny to think of how under fire like BioWare's been in the past for Mass Effect. Kind of forgot.
Well, get excited about what their new IP is because their main studio is working on it, and it looks like it might be fantasy related. But that's based exclusively on like their hiring patterns and like people experience creating beasts and landscapes.
Beasts.
Are you sure it's not just the new Dragon Age?
God, probably. It would be. It is kind of close though, like, is that too close to Dragon Age for them to create a game like that? But it's narrative driven. That's like all they've said about it.
Probably.
Oh, speaking of Dragon Age, Keith, so this was just one person mentioning it, but some folks were saying that the side quests reminded them of Dragon Age Inquisition, which were just sort of like errands that felt mildly out of place. So I think that might be another reason why people are unhappy. I guess I should emphasize, like, I'm not trying to create a backlash against people who have legitimate concerns. It's really only the people that rate it like with a 0, 1, or a 2, which is specifically reserved for broken games. That's just like clearly lack of critical thought. But I think a lot of the criticisms people do have are completely legitimate. Like that one.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, I'll say as someone who played Dragon Age Inquisition, it's some of the side quests were definitely verging on feeling a little bit hollow. And I occasionally rag on Inquisition. I liked Inquisition a lot,
Come the infested.
but
We have to hold
it was
them off until
just
sunrise.
elements of it that I didn't want to see in Mass Effect. And I was glad to see from like the demo that we saw that there are more sort of curated little dungeons, so to speak, or like ships or space stations or whatever, like little curated missions, because I prefer those to open world side quests. I love open world landscapes, I love exploration, but I prefer, if I have to choose between curated, linear areas or small areas and sort of a procedurally generated open world, then I'll choose the curated,
You are just gonna love Zelda. Oh my God.
Yeah, you really are gonna like it. I'm really excited for you to play it. I hope you can soon.
You just saved me a lot of trouble.
Just because of the things that you describe enjoying, it just fits very, very well.
Oh, that's literally what the Breath of the Wild has like revolutionized and
Yeah.
made people question game development forever. So that's good.
Man, I'm really looking forward to that game.
Me too.
I'm gonna go play it right after this. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm gonna do something else. But then I'm gonna go and play it before bed.
Something else? You got a secret?
Nah, I'm
What's
just
your
gonna.
secret?
I'm gonna be recording this week's mutation in StarCraft.
I guess that makes sense.
Well, Keith, when you do play Mass Effect, please give us a detailed update next week if you do play it this week.
Oh, I will.
Please.
Please.
Please, God.
Please.
Don't leave us hanging.
Plus,
Okay, well, I think that we're about out of time, unless anyone has any other complaints about game reviews they'd like to voice now. Forever hold your peace.
Keep attacking us even after sunrise.
Frick GameStop.
Looks like
For
AI
I think that-
giving Mass Effect a 6
Get
out
those
of 10.
defenses in place.
I think BioWare is an SJW cabal, and they deliberately ruined their game because,
It's funny because Poe's Law, there's someone who
We have to be
yeah.
the ones to do it.
It's real.
Commanders, it's almost sunrise.
Anyway, yeah, this is the DPS podcast signing out, and next week we'll get some cool Mass Effect details. Maybe. Probably.
Tune in next week for that exclusive DPS podcast look at Mass Effect Andromeda. And don't forget to hit that like button.